Jah Oil Company stands tall as a trusted name in energy, keeping the Gambia moving with service stations across the country and a commitment to innovation and reliability. In Ferry, Jah Group is reshaping our industrial landscape. The Jah Oil Cement Factory can produce up to 100,000 bags a day, reducing imports, creating jobs, and building a stronger Gambia brick by brick. And in the heart of the Central River region, Jah Farming Initiative is cultivating food security. With thousands of hectares under development and modern irrigation, Jah Farming is turning the Gambia's soil into abundance. Jah Group is more than a company. It is a vision of self-sufficiency, resilience, and progress. The Jah Group of companies, investing in industry, agriculture, and energy, building the Gambia's future today.
In the Gambia, we all move to different paces. Time is money, convenience is power, and now both are in your hands. No more long lines, no more late payments, no more missed chances, not anymore. Because now the Gambia has its own super app, Zap. One app, one tap, endless convenience. Send money instantly, pay your bills in seconds, shop without borders, pay your rides, order your meal, buy your ticket, deposit and withdraw money for absolutely free. No extra charges, no hidden fees, only on Zap Super App. This is not just convenience. This is confidence. This is the future in your hands. And the best part, Zap is born right here. Built for us, designed for every Gambian home, every Gambian dream. So don't wait in the past. Step into the future. Download Zap today on App Store and Play Store and enjoy endless free services. Call us today on our toll-free number 1666 or on 260-0001. Zap, all in one, all for you. Tap in, zap in.
Every step of the way, banking with excellence. At the tip of your fingers, there's only one bank. Bank Africa, we make it happen. Bank Africa, we make it happen. Bank Africa, we make it happen. Bank Africa.
Yëpp lay fay. Sant Yàlla.
Looy xaar utal Wave nga scan nga fay nag doo ci yokku dara.
Now, the Gambia has taken a major step in modernizing its maritime transport system with the launch of the country's first hybrid green ferry, a vessel designed to cut emissions, improve efficiency, and ease long-standing challenges on the Banjul-Barrow crossing. The managing director of the Gambia Ports Authority joins us now to break down what this new ferry means for passengers and for the future of ferry services. Mr. Ousman Jobarteh, welcome to Coffee Time and thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you, Jacob, and very good morning to you and to your esteemed viewers and listeners both in the Gambia and abroad. I first of all would like to say Eid Mubarak to all our viewers and listeners, and also a blessed Lent to our Christian brothers and sisters.
Eid Mubarak to you as well. Weesu would ñu ne déwénati parce que ñu ci mood bi ba tey. Going ahead with our conversation, for many of the people who are yet to see the new ferry, how would you describe it to them?
Well, thank you for that question. The new ferry is state-of-the-art, built to design by Diamond Shipyard in Holland. And one of the peculiarities is that it's called a green ferry. Green in the sense that it has a combination of power generation, using the traditional diesel engines and as well as solar-powered battery systems to provide thrust for the ferry. The advantage also is that it lowers carbon emission and reduces the fuel consumption, thus more efficiency. So we expect more reliable and safer services along these very important Banjul and Barrow crossing points. And that's the main attraction of the ferry. And knowing the navigational challenges we have across this side of the river, the ferry is designed with state-of-the-art navigational features, such as underwater cameras. Because you will realize that with the current ferries, there's been a lot of entanglement with rope and debris, in the marine environment, particularly around the Barrow and Banjul landing sites. To the extent that it, when it gets entangled with these propellers, it affects the engines of the ferries and requires frequent maintenance because of breakdown. Now, this new ferry has underwater cameras, which will be able to detect ahead, even where there are other obstacles like rocks around the Barrow settlement, to guide in the navigational safety. So these are one of the features. And also what we call the belly of the ferry. This is the void space between the car deck and the lower end of the ferry. Usually it's a void space, but the transformation we've done on this new ferry is that we've created some room for the engineering team, like mini workshops, and this is the area where the batteries that power the solar system are located. So those are utilized effectively to ensure that the engineers on board have a workstation in which to monitor, because these are very highly technology-driven, advanced systems in terms of the controls. So those are some of the changes that makes this new ferry Barrow different from the existing Kunta Kinte. And another feature also is that the passenger deck, there's sort of a separation between how the passengers embark on the ferry and go to the passenger waiting halls rather than having to interfere or come across vehicles. And there are more toilets on each of the passenger decks. And there's also a firefighting system overhanging the car deck, on the main ferry, with other features like the VIP room and all the other navigational systems that are in the other ferries. But technically, it is more modern. And it just shows our stewardship as a country and as a port in ensuring transport resilient infrastructure. And this is why it was very attractive for the African Development Bank when we came up with the concept to come in and co-fund the financing of this ferry.
It must be an expensive thing. How was the money raised to purchase this new vessel?
Well, as I said earlier, the Banjul Fort Port project is being financed by the traditional financiers of the port, the African Development Bank, because they financed the first 3 series of the port development projects since 1978, thereabout. Okay. When the project concept was developed, the climate resilience part of it is what provided the attraction, because it aligns with 4 critical strategy objectives of the African Development Bank in terms of increased mobility, economic growth, and environmental sustainability to be anchored along resilience. Now, in preparing the project, the African Development Bank realized that the original scope in Banjul was meant to extend the existing jetty northwards, leaning towards the ferry terminal, and with the acquisition of the Hafdai area and the construction of new container terminal. So when the basis of the design was presented, it was realized that it would interfere with the ferry navigation lane. So the concept was developed to relocate the ferries and invest in ancillary projects that would also add value so that we can get maximum value from the port project, because it's not only interesting to develop the port infrastructure whilst leaving the ancillary support infrastructure that would add value. So thereabouts components were identified, including the ferries. So when we approached the African Development Bank, they provided grant funding around December 2023 to the tune of $20.156 million US. And it consisted financing 5 components which would support the port development. One of them was the acquisition of this new green ferry. The second component has to do with the widening and extension of the Bond Road. This is the main artery that leads to the port area from the Banjul Highway. And the third component was to develop a new climate-resilient integrated national transport master plan. And the fourth project was the capacity development for the Ministry of Transport to improve their skills, in infrastructure project monitoring. And then the fifth project was to do with gender mainstreaming and trying to see how the project-affected persons can be impacted in a more positive way. So these were the 5 components. But by and large, from this grant envelope, the ferry alone occupied almost about 70% of the grant funding.
Okay.
And the way it was structured, it was co-financed by the Gambia government and the GPA with counterpart funding, because that's the way the ADB financing grant is structured. The 85% of the funds are provided by the African Development Bank and 15% by the government and the GPA. So that's how the ferry came to be financed.
Now, one important thing that we Gambians are often said not to give much attention to is maintenance. What maintenance plans have been drawn up for this new ferry?
Well, it is comforting to note that part of the agreement with Diamond Shipyard, noting the highly sophisticated and technology-driven components of this new ferry, is to come to an agreement to deploy a resident engineer. This engineer, in the contract, it was only envisaged to have him deployed on the ground. He would work like a normal staff on a daily basis to do all the pre-checklist, and after the operations to also do a final checklist on the vessel.
Okay.
So it will also add advantage because it's a diamond product, and some of the shuttle propulsion systems and the engineering features are patent. Usually some of these big companies, they do not necessarily train your staff on how to utilize this program because it has a programming language. But with the resident engineer on the ground, he will work with our team of engineers on a daily basis, like a normal staff. And in that process, there will be a lot of knowledge and skills transfer for the sustainable maintenance after the engineering contract has, resident engineering contract has lapsed. But what we are doing as GPA is, aside the provision in the contract for the resident engineer, we have also extended his stay at our own cost to ensure that there's sustainable maintenance of the ferry. And one of the innovative techniques, management practices that we have developed is there was a team of young Gambians that benefited from a Gambia government scholarship. These were students with very impressive grade 12 results. They were identified from different schools and sent to the Regional Maritime University in Ghana to study various fields in engineering. Now they have graduated. Most of them have come with very impressive results. Most of them are from the Dean's list also in electrical, electronic, and marine engineering. So we've identified them and employed them and placed them on this new ferry because of this technology driven. Now these young engineers have the academic background. So now the resident engineer will work with them to pass on some of the dexterity of the skills required for the sustainable maintenance. So the idea is to create a business unit out of this Barrow ferry, such that if the model works, hopefully we will replicate it on the other ferries, so that there will be increased accountability for the ferry deployment. So it's like a group of staff will be assigned to a ferry, and they will operate it like a business unit. What that does also, it encourages competition amongst the different business units to ensure that those that ensure the ferry has maximum deployment ratios will be compensated. So that's the kind of innovation that we've brought into the management practices. But we are hopeful that this will work. Aside that, there are also challenges in the environment. For example, in Barrow, this new ferry requires sufficient depth. And we know that the aerodynamics within the area in which the ferries operate are also faced with challenges, particularly the rate of sedimentation, because it's a river port and most times silt gets deposited along the shoreline, particularly in the landing sites at Banjul and Barrow. So we've committed resources recently, and right now there is a local company that we've contracted. It's mobilized on site to do the dredging, remove a lot of sand from the ferry lane so that we'll have adequate depth to ensure smooth sailing and improve navigation. So these are some of the issues that we've done to ensure sustainable maintenance of the ferries.
Let's turn to another issue of interest to the Gambian public, the Albara concession, that is. Is it on the renegotiation, as some people suggest, and why is a renegotiation necessary?
Actually, I think, for want of a better expression, we don't know what motivated the media headline, but the way it was captioned did not reflect what actually happened. It was about a month ago that the GPA was summoned at the Public Enterprises Committee of the National Assembly, following a post-audit report by the National Audit Office on the cargo handling performance at the GPA. There was an audit that was done on cargo handling performance by the National Audit Office in 2021. So after the third year, which was about September 2024, the audit re-engaged on a post-audit to see whether most of the findings and recommendations have been implemented. And thankfully, the report has indicated a satisfactory improvement in terms of the implementation of the recommendations that we have flagged earlier. So it was during that process, in the exchange with the honorable members at the National Assembly, that the question arose that there were some delays that were identified in the implementation of the Sanyang pre-construction activities. And there the explanation was given that yes, there were delays in the pre-construction activity. And the stage we are at, the parties, that is Albara and the GPA, had to invoke a clause in the concession agreement which calls for remediation. And in that remediation, the timelines that were supposed to have been achieved in the first year, those were the ones that were being renegotiated and not the contract specific. A lot of questions also get asked about because we are bound by the access to information, legal provision instruments to ensure that there is a full public disclosure about this agreement. It's not that it's secretive, but there's a lot of confidential commercial information. So our lawyers have been tasked to provide excerpts that can be shared with the public to understand the highlights of how this transaction for the port concession was structured. So those are some of the things that were mentioned at the National Assembly. And then the headline went that the whole concession was being renegotiated. But that's not the case. Once we experienced delay, particularly in accessing the land site for some of the geotechnical investigation, the environmental studies, because these are very complex studies. And we expected that by February of this year, they would have been complete so that the construction work would start in Sanyang. So those were the delays we experienced. But thankfully, there's been improvement because the land sites have been allocated and government has issued the lease for the Sanyang area for the onshore activity. And the inland platforms where they're expected to be constructed in Kaur and Basse, we also have been given letters of allocation. And the environmental impact assessment study, the contract has been signed and the consultant has mobilized on site. And it is government's obligation also to prepare what we call the resettlement action plan, because this will be a follow-up to the environmental impact assessment study to understand how the project affected persons are going to be compensated. Our overall objective is, although there's less encumbrance in the land that is now identified, is to relocate the activities of those that have their livelihood dependent on their presence on site, rather than giving monetary compensation. Just allow people to move on with their lives, and then maybe 5 years down the line, they're in a worse-off situation. So our primary objective in this resettlement action plan is to relocate the activities that are already existing on the beach. So by and large, we have successfully negotiated a new timeline. And these are set with practical instruments to ensure that we have a trusted partner in Albara, and we are confident that from what is visible in terms of their commitment, they will deliver on the project.
Unfortunately, time is against us. I'd finally like to say, let's look forward. What lies ahead?
What lies ahead is that we've demonstrated our resolve to continue with climate resilient transport solutions. And this is the main attraction for the development partners. And with the peace and stability in the country and the renewed confidence from our development partners, we have a lot of goodwill, and we expect to leverage on that to implement more development projects, particularly in the transport infrastructure. Because oftentimes there's the analogy that investment will go if there's bankability. But transport infrastructure has proven to be actually an enabler and induces growth. Imagine a road built in the middle of the rural areas. What it does is it encourages women farmers particularly to produce more, and that increased output is because they have now access to market. So that's the thing that government is doing, anchored on the National Development Plan era and the National Transport Policy 2017 to 2028. So we are hopeful that the future looks bright, and this will enhance the country's competitiveness to serve as a center of excellence for trade and distribution in West Africa. Because West Africa has a big market. The population is about 473 million, and the annual trade is valued in excess of $271 billion US. So it's a huge market. And the ferry service and the port constitute what we call the missing link in the prior Dakar-Abidjan, because there is a continental project called the Trans-Africa Highway number 7, which links Lagos to Dakar. Then the Lagos to Abidjan, I understand, is a 6-way highway. It is done. So now it's the Abidjan to Dakar leg. And in that, prior has to be linked, and that is going by a sea link. So between Dakar to Abidjan, the other missing link is the Banjul-Barra Bridge, for which ECOWAS has mobilized, and the consultancy terms of reference and the project preparation for the procurement is being handled by these ECOWAS funds. So these are projects that are very much alive, and there's factual information to prove that these projects will be implemented.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jobarteh.
The pleasure is mine.
Jah Oil Company stands tall as a trusted name in energy, keeping the Gambia moving with service stations across the country and a commitment to innovation and reliability. In Farafenni, Jah Group is reshaping our industrial landscape. The Jah Oil Cement Factory can produce up to 100,000 bags a day, reducing imports, creating jobs, and building a stronger Gambia brick by brick. And in the heart of the Central River region, Jah Farming Initiative is cultivating food security. With thousands of hectares under development and modern irrigation, Jah Farming is turning the Gambia's soil into abundance. Jah Group is more than a company. It is a vision of self-sufficiency, resilience, and progress. The Jah Group of companies, investing in industry, agriculture, and energy, building the Gambia's future today.
In the Gambia, we all move to different paces. Time is money, convenience is power, and now both are in your hands. No more long lines, no more late payments, no more missed chances, not anymore. Because now the Gambia has its own super app, Zap. One app, one tap, endless convenience. Send money instantly, pay your bills in seconds, shop without borders, pay your rides, order your meal, buy your ticket, deposit and withdraw money for absolutely free. No extra charges, no hidden fees, only on Zap Super App. This is not just convenience. This is confidence. This is the future in your hands. And the best part, Zap is born right here. Built for us, designed for every Gambian home, every Gambian dream. So don't wait in the past. Step into the future. Download Zap today on App Store and Play Store and enjoy endless free services. Call us today on our toll-free number 1666 or on 260-0001. Zap, all in one, all for you. Tap in, zap in.
Every step of the way, banking with excellence. At the tip of your fingers, there's only one bank. Bank Africa, we make it happen. Bank Africa, we make it happen. Bank Africa, we make it happen. Bank Africa.
yëf lay fay sant yàlla
looy xaar utal Wave nga scan nga fay te nag doo ci yokk dara